licensed professional counselor in Kansas City, Missouri. And I have a passion for helping people through their toughest times, as well as educating on what mental illness is and what it is not. On this show, we will discuss topics that surround mental health. So, let's get into it. Good afternoon, 5 Radio XL fam. This is Cuba, and you are tuning into the Panic Button, a show where we talk about issues surrounding mental health, mental wellness, whatever you want to call it. So today I have a good, exciting topic, a very necessary topic for today, and that is dealing with stigma and mental health. But before we delve into that topic, I want to introduce my guest on the show. We have Miss Lorena Jordan here.
Hello.
She's going to talk about an event that she's going to have here in Kansas City on next weekend, next Sunday.
Yes.
And so we'll have her talk more about that toward the end of the show this afternoon. And then sitting before me is my good old friend, Mr. Roy White. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Kansas City. And I'm going to read your little bio here, my card here. So Roy White, a.k.a. Roy the Therapist, if you want to look him up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media, he goes by Roy the Therapist. And he is licensed in both Kansas and Missouri. He has been in private practice for 6 years, but has been in the mental health, social welfare field for about 17 years. He is a native Kansas Citian, and he is a proud graduate of Northeast High School, and all of us here at the table are as well. Go Vikings! And he got his undergrad. Where'd you get your undergrad at?
At LU.
Lincoln, yes,
Lincoln
okay.
University,
With a degree in sociology, and then you received your master's degree in family therapy from Friends University. He is a proud father of 4 young boys, and he is a devoted husband to his high school sweetheart, Miss Maya. I know her as well. So tell me a little bit more about the work you do and why you got into this field.
Yeah. So, as you said, I'm a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist here in the area. I as soon as I graduated from Lincoln, I started work as a caseworker. I was working with felons who had substance abuse problems. Oftentimes, those individuals would be referred to mental health services and things like that to help them through their addictions and other issues that kind of contributed to their substance abuse. From there, I worked at Swope Park Health Center for a number of years prior to moving to Atlanta, where I worked for the Division of Family and Children Services there. And there I had my first experience working full-time in a residential mental health facility. And I'll say that while I was there, the experience working with the clients on a daily basis was, it was so rich. It was such a great experience getting to work with them in their issues in the moment. It really developed my appetite for this field. I've worked as a caseworker and other in other roles for another few years before I got my master's degree.
And he is a proud graduate of Northeast High School, and all of us here at the table are as well. Go Vikings!
Sorry about that. And the process of becoming a therapist, it was a very unexpected, transformative journey. And as I learned more about myself and what I really felt was true about this therapy process, I just love the work I do. I love working with my clients. Right now, about half my clients are children, half are adults. I keep a caseload of probably about right around 20 clients right now. And I love it. I love the work that I do. I worked for a while at Kids TLC out in Olathe. I ran a unit of about 12 kids out there. I co-facilitated that unit with a couple of other therapists. It was just a very, very rich experience. I love this work. I love the field. It's important work. I always say that once you start doing this work, um, other things in life, the volume gets turned down on. It feels like this is where the work is. This is where the work is for so many people, for so many things, for so many issues in the world.
All right, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then on the phone we have Mr. Ulysses Lee Moore, PhD, LPC. He has founded the Hope Project in Round Rock, Texas, which for those who don't know is outside of Austin, Texas, because I didn't know. So the Hope Project is an organization of mental health professionals that provide tools needed for individuals and families to live and thrive together in their communities. They provide these services in partnership with other public and private organizations. Ulysses has been in the helping profession for more than 18 years, and he has worked for Child Protective Services, the Texas State Agency for Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities, state and federal vocational rehab agencies as a counselor. Ulysses is also a veteran, a father, a husband. So Ulysses, share with us more about your background and why you got into this field.
Yes, thank you, Sheila. Good evening, everyone. As you said, I've been in the field for more than 18 years. I started off with CPS, as you stated. Didn't really feel that niche, so I went on to MHMRs, worked there for a little while, then with the state for approximately 8 years, and now with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I work with veterans, counseling veterans. Been doing that for roughly about 10 years now. And I also have a private practice. What brought me into this field, and me and my mom still joke about it today. She asked me when I was 5, what did I want to be when I grew up? How did I know where I got it from? I couldn't even tell you. But my words to her was, I wanted to be a counselor. Now let me preface that by saying, when I was 5, I don't know, well, I'm a little older than most, I'm hitting 60 next year. But anyway, so when I was a young kid, we had the Black Panther community housing in the neighborhood. And I was inspired by this gentleman by the name of Mr. Rogers. And that's what he done for our community. He brought in love to our community. So, yeah, I took that, made it my mantra, and here I am today. What we do, which, you spoke of, we do go out in the communities and work with families that's struggling. They're struggling to reintegrate, to integrate. A lot of these families, we're bringing kids out of that's been detained for whatever reason. They've been in rehab treatments, and we're trying to reintegrate them back into their community, their natural environment. So we do a lot of good work there. And then the ones that are really struggling, I have a private practice where I do counseling as well, part-time, of course. And I do that with families that are struggling, individuals that are struggling, and I also have some couples, which I really enjoy. Short of that, my passion is probably going to be working with individuals, helping them make it through this journey we call life. I have a passion for that. The people that I employ have a passion for that, and for that I am eternally grateful.
All right, thank you. So we'll go right into the topic of today's show, which is stigma. And I just want to read the definition of stigma, because we can just say stigma and throw it out there. But I want to read the definition because when you hear it, it kind of, it puts everything in perspective, or it kind of like, that's how we treat people, And so, like, stigma, there are 2 definitions that I found: a set of negative and often unfair beliefs that a society or group of people have about something or someone, or a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, person, or a group of people. And so we attach that stigma to people with mental illness. And so my first question to you, all of you, why is there such a stigma? There's no such stigma against physical health. Like,
Mhm.
okay, you have diabetes, high blood pressure, go to the doctor, get some meds, eat right, exercise. But then when we say mental illness, it's like, oh no, you crazy. Like,
Mhm.
you know, so why is it that, in your opinion, we'll start with Roy if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. Um, I just had this conversation not too long ago about just kind of the source of that. And just like you said, with physical health, typically we don't stigmatize people for that. Um, and with physical health, every January, we talk about, okay, I'm gonna get in shape for the summer. I'm gonna do this, to get my body right and get healthy and so on and so forth. Or we may fall down with our physical health and say, okay, it's time to make some life changes. I'm gonna start eating right. I'm gonna exercise. I'm gonna do all these things. And I think that because the results from those things are more observable, they manifest themselves in a physical way. I think people are more apt to do that, especially because ideally, when we think about someone who's physically healthy, we paint a pretty picture of that. We paint a pretty picture of that. With mental health, I think that because the baseline for everyone for being healthy is just being normal, is what we would call normal. Anything that would be a mental health struggle would make us all feel abnormal. Now, I think that abnormality is something that people feel like they need to hide. And then, you take it a step further, specifically in the African American community. We as a people culturally will typically say if there's an issue, we keep it in the house, we keep it in the family. We don't talk about our issues outside the family. And so that will stop us from going to get the help that we need, just, off tops. Where if it's a broken arm, we'll go to the doctor. But if it's something that we feel is wrong, we feel like it's a reflection not only of that individual, but of our family, of our bloodline. So we'll try to hide that away. We might talk to the individuals who are closest to us about it. We might, but oftentimes we'll try to hide those things. We'll try to disguise them. We'll try to deal with them the same way that we might try to deal with a physical injury and just walk it off. I'm just going to deal with it. And then to not necessarily compound the situation, but another thing that I think may be a hurdle is that oftentimes we want to be proud of who we are. We want to, we talk about being kings and queens and things of that nature, and talk about all the things that we've overcome and all the things we've endured and all the things that we continue to endure. And to say that I can't overcome this, to say that I'm not enough to deal with these mental health struggles, things that we might write off as just being sad or being mad or being hurt, things that are that we might attribute to being, for lack of a better term, weak. We don't want to acknowledge those pieces, and so we hide them away and we don't get the help that we need. And when someone does speak up and say, especially, I think in a lot of ways it's harder for men to say, man, I'm really feeling down, I'm really feeling depressed, especially to another man, which sometimes you need that, it's hard to say those things, so we just stuff it. We stuff it because we don't want to be viewed as weak. We don't want to be viewed as not being strong enough. We don't want to be viewed as inadequate to our peers, to our lovers, to our loved ones, to anyone. So we just bottle it away, and then you see it manifest itself in many, many, many unhealthy ways. One of the things that people always talk about are coping skills. People always talk about coping skills. And typically when you talk about them, people are thinking of positive things, but a lot of times those negative things, that the drug use and even being over sexualized, those are coping skills. They're just not
maladaptive.
Exactly. They're just maladaptive. They're just unhealthy.
Yeah.
But that's just a way that people are trying to deal with some of these things. And because, again, going back to just that word of stigma, because they don't want to be stigmatized, they don't want to be viewed in a negative manner and have that negative connotation put on them. So yeah, that's my small piece and thoughts on
It
it.
was big though. Yeah, yeah. All right, Mr. Ulysses, tell us, why do you think that there is such a stigma attached to mental illness?
Brother Roy hit on some very key points, which is hard to follow, but some of that I'm trying to piggyback off.
Yeah.
Brother.
Yeah,
You needed to reiterate it. Yes.
Right. So, the first piece I want to hit is that, Roy, I think you covered all the things that us men go through, especially people of color, some of the stigmas that we have in our culture, which is great. And the other piece is that some of that spills over into the workplace, like for veterans, or not veterans, but service members. When you're in the service, okay, I was diagnosed with PTSD when I was in service, since retired. But when you're in service and you get those diagnoses, you can't bring them out. You don't want to bring them out because they're career ending. And that to me is probably the number one thing that's wrong, that's detrimentally wrong with the military, is that they do discharge soldiers with the diagnosis of PTSD. Not all, but for the majority of them medically discharged, which I think is a disservice to our country and to the men in uniform. I think these people need to have access to treatment, as we talked about. Guys with high blood pressure, they get treatment, they're allowed to stay in. Guys with different ailments get treatment, and they're allowed to stay in. I think people with mental illness or mental diagnoses need to be afforded these same opportunities. And I've worked with some of these guys that get out and they're devastated because they're thrown out here. Now they got this diagnosis they got to deal with as well. Not only that, they still got to put food on the table. They still got to provide for their families, children. They got to find a place to live, and all these other pressures. And we wonder, how do you create a ticking time bomb? That's how you create a ticking time bomb. Those are some of the prime ingredients of that. So I think as a military, as a whole, our society needs to step back and look at how we are dealing with our veterans coming out, how we're dealing with our service members that are in service right now, and try to rethink that whole process of, mental health wellness, and maintaining our service members in the ranks instead of putting them out. If that makes any sense at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as we were talking, I was thinking of like me growing up, African American home, the perceptions of mental health. I was trying to just think back of like, what did we, and I couldn't really think. It's like, I've heard stuff like, oh, he's crazy, he needs a check. Like, that is like it. Like, so I just want to get any one of your opinion. Like, when you were growing up in your household, how was mental illness addressed or even talked about, or if it was talked about?
Well, for me, actually growing up, I went to a private school to where the teachers thought I needed some mental help because I wasn't acting as they thought I should. I wasn't participating as I thought I should. And so my parents was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and let her talk to one of their counselors. So I went in there, so I'm laying there, and I was like, so why are you here? I said, why do you think I'm here? Because I felt the counselor had a problem, not me. In which I didn't, because my focus and I was actually in the 5th grade when this happened. I didn't want to participate with those children because I felt they weren't on my level. And when I say on my level, on my way of thinking, because I saw things different, I thought outside the box. So yes, I was the outsider. But in the home, my grandmother was like, ain't nothing wrong with her. Why you sending her to those white people? Ain't nothing wrong with her. She just likes to be by herself. And that's what it was. I liked alone time because I was a thinker. So there literally wasn't nothing wrong. So I was just giving the questions back to the therapist. And so they was like, there's nothing wrong with her. She's fine. So it was just like swept under the rug, leave it in the house like you said, and we'll deal with it in the house. So that's how growing up in my house I was.
Yeah, I know. In my household, it just was never discussed. Mental health, I don't know that emotions or feelings were ever even really just explicitly openly talked about. You know, like you said, in the community, you know, you hear stuff like, oh, that person gets a check, or even sometimes they call it crazy check. You know, call it crazy check, or they take crazy pills. You know, things like that. So you know, again, just that stigma, and don't get me wrong, we've come a very long way from where mental health used to be. Where you know people would just lock those loved ones away forever and never talk about them again. But at the same time, we still have a ways to go as far as just reducing that negative connotation that comes with something that is literally just hereditary for some people. You know, you start looking at people's family histories, and it's the same mental health problems for generations that have shown up that we just didn't talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking about that, I mean, you necessarily don't have to have like that genetic component or whatever, but just the toxic environments that we grow up in, and then we continue that into our own homes as we have children. And so it's we need, you know, people to get help and want to get help, because you may be a schizophrenic, and then maybe your children may inherit it, or you just may be narcissistic or some kind of personality disorder, then you pass that and your kids grow up in that environment or something. So we need it, you know, it's much needed. And with you, Mr. Ulysses, what about when you were growing up, how was mental health talked about, or if it was talked about, or emotions in your family?
Yeah, great question. In my family, unfortunately, it wasn't talked about because we had other major issues, you know, food, paying bills, getting things done. You know, it wasn't talked about. Although we had, and I'm pretty sure everybody had that uncle in the back room. You know, we had that. Don't mess with the uncle in the back room. Alone, right? Keep the door locked, whatever. But and we really didn't face it. And even though it was prevalent in my family gene, the gene of mental illness, we still didn't discuss it, you know. Till this day, we really don't discuss it because, you know, moms, they don't discuss it, so we don't discuss it. But, you know, in my family now, we talk about this. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be put on a shelf. You know, we need to know what we're going through. Some of the things that we go through on a daily basis, man, it reeks of mental illness, mental wellness. You have to be prepared to discuss it, because if you're not, that means you're locking these feelings in. And when you lock these feelings in, that's the breeding ground of mental illness. So you know, my family, we try to talk about it now, make sure it stays on the forefront of things we go through as people of color on a daily basis. You know, macro, micro aggressions that we have to deal with. You know, we've got to be able to combat those, deal with them, and talk about them. If not, we're doing ourselves a great disservice.
And when you were talking about how when you were growing up you had to worry about food on the table or roof, I thought immediately of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like you have to have, I mean, at a certain level, you have to have those basic needs met before you can kind of delve into that too. So, and I get that, and that kind of goes into what I want to talk about. Kind of segues into that. I want to talk about mental health disparities in regards to African Americans and mental health. And when we talk about disparities, we talk about, for those who kind of don't know or kind of know what it means, but just inequality in, you know, healthcare and things like that. And so I got these, I didn't write all of them down, but I got some interesting facts from the American Psychiatric Association in regards to mental health and disparities. And it says that African Americans make up 13.3% of the U.S. population, and 27% of African Americans live below poverty level, compared to the 10.8% of non-Hispanic whites. And about 11% of African Americans are not covered by health insurance, compared to the 7% of non-Hispanic whites. And so I'm I'm taking that to assume that since they don't have the health care, they can't go to the providers to get help for their mental illness. And then it says the rates of mental health in African Americans are similar to those of the general population. However, African Americans often receive poorer quality of care and lack of access to culturally competent care. I'm gonna say that again, we don't get culturally competent care, and only 1 in 3 African Americans who need mental health care receive it. And then a few more. Compared to whites, African Americans are less likely to receive consistent care, less frequently included in research, more likely to use the ER or their primary care doctors instead of a mental health professional for their needs. And then African Americans are likely or frequently diagnosed with schizophrenia and less likely to be diagnosed with mood disorders. And they're thinking that difference is how African Americans express their symptoms and so that they say, let me go back, express symptoms of emotional stress, the way they express it contributes to the misdiagnosis. And I can tell you that that is true. So when I worked at a local community mental health, I worked with the feds actually. So I would work with men going either into federal prison or coming out. And so a lot of them had the diagnosis of schizophrenia. Now let me tell you one thing that most of these men had in common. They went into jail for drug charges. They were drug dealers. So when you're a drug dealer, what are you? You're paranoid. You're always got to watch your back. You're always thinking somebody out to get you. Why? Because it's true.
Yep.
But you have these people that are not familiar with the culture diagnosing them with paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah.
You know, they may have some mood disorder, but that goes into that culturally competent provider that knows the culture, and then just misdiagnosing these people because they're not familiar with the culture. So, and then that goes into the one other fact that black people with mental conditions, particularly schizophrenia and bipolar and other psychotic disorders or psychosis, are more likely to be incarcerated than people of other races. So, you other professionals, all that I just spit out to you there, give me your view on that, any of those facts that I shout out. And I'll go with you first, Mr. Ulysses.
Yeah.
Hello?
Oh.
I know it.
There are a wide range of disparities, man. I'm guessing the one I would like to speak about is just the disparity of just the healthcare, the care that people of color, specifically African Americans, receive in the mental health world. It's not great, not good. I don't think it adequately assist them in dealing with those issues, because a lot of times you may have, a mental illness that presents itself, say, generally, because the bulk of my clientele are kids, we enter into the family because of the kid, and, once you get in, you see the kid, of course, I'm pretty sure everybody remembers Red Fox had this joke out, you want to know how ugly kids get ugly, follow them home, or
yeah.
Anyway, that's
yeah.
But if you ever want to know why kids are dysfunctional, why they have behavior issues, you need to follow them home, because a lot of that comes from the home environment. And when we get in there, we see this stuff, and you have to work with the family. You can't just work with the kid, because the kid will always return to its natural environment. That's the hope, right? So when we send that kid back into its natural environment, even with the tools that we it's just hard to understand how they understand where this family is coming from, the dynamics. It's just impossible to me. It just seems unreasonable to fathom that these people can understand where these families are coming from because they can't. You don't see the real burdens on this family, which a large part may be financial. You have to help them resolve these issues. Once you pull away from that family, disconnect from that family, they still have those issues. And if you haven't taught them how to deal with those issues, the family's going to be, they're going to have a lot of issues. So my biggest disparity is going to be treating the family as a nucleus, treating the family as a whole. And I'm sure Brother Roy can expound on this. Treating the family as a whole. You have to treat the family. You can't treat the disease. I think this is the term they use it in the medical field. You have to treat the person as a whole.
Absolutely, I 110% agree with that. As I stated earlier, I've done a lot of work with children, and that started prior to me being a therapist. I was a children's case manager for a long period of time. And again, I worked for the Division of Family and Children's Services, and I worked in children inpatient facilities and things like that, and continue to do work at Kids TLC in Olathe, which is also a inpatient program, and also has a kind of temporary housing program there as well. And there is no way that you can expect long-term change in a child without the parents doing something different. One of the things I do appreciate about Kids TLC is that there's a mandatory family therapy component there, because there's no way that you are going to change one person in a system and that stay change without changing everyone else around that individual, especially a child. If you take a child and try to help them, they'll be great in that setting when you're helping them. I know a lot of therapists who have worked with children, and in those sessions, the child is doing great, but then you continue to get reports from the parents that in the home setting, the child is still doing the same thing, but the parents are still doing the same thing. There's still the same thing going on in the school and the home and in the church and everywhere else around that child, so the child is going to continue to do the same thing, while with the therapist, they're doing different stuff, so the therapist is getting a different response. To backtrack to the statistics and things that you spoke on, Cuba, all of that stuff, I feel like it compounds, one after another. You look at first individuals who are just reluctant in general to go and get care for mental illness, and then not all, but a larger percent of them don't have insurance. You stated that a lot of them will go to the ER to get care. So when you go to the emergency room for needs surrounding mental health, the individual that is doing the evaluation, that's doing the assessment, has to make a snap judgment. And they can only make that snap judgment off of what is sitting in front of them right then in that moment. And you might get a diagnosis of schizophrenia when that's not necessarily the best fit. That's not necessarily the best diagnosis. Anybody who's worked with clients for a period of time know that in that first session, you're not going to get an accurate picture of what all is going on with that client. I don't care how thorough your assessment is. Until you really get to know a client, you're not really going to know what a full diagnosis is for them. I know working with kids that would come in, they would have this long laundry list of diagnoses. And after working with them for a period of time, it was like, this doesn't fit. They don't have this one, they don't have this one, they don't have this one. And we would work to kind of strip away a lot of those diagnoses that weren't really working diagnoses for them. Things that someone may have seen in a acute setting or an emergency room setting that didn't necessarily fit what was really going on with that child, what they were responding to in that moment. And then you take those same people who are going largely untreated, and with whatever they're going through, be it depression or PTSD or active schizophrenia, hallucinations and things like that, and you just put them in the community without services around them because they're not going to get the services, and they're going to get arrested. They're going to get arrested and incarcerated at higher rates than people who are getting the services, people who might have, as Dr. Ulysses stated, who might have those wraparound services in place because no one's helping them. No one's saying, hey, you might want to, start taking these meds to help kind of dull down some of these symptoms so that you're not in the community where someone, in a community where people say, oh, he gets a crazy check, he's acting crazy right now, somebody call the police. And all of a sudden you're getting arrested. This person who needs to be hospitalized is going to jail. And I think everyone's heard the statistic talking about the incredibly high rate of individuals in prison who struggle with some sort of mental health diagnoses. And you imagine what could have been had they got services on the front end versus getting services in prison.
Right.
Yeah.
I like it. So what can we do? We've talked about some things, kind of touched it, but what can we do now as a community to stop that stigma or decrease that stigma of mental health?
I think that is a really good question. One thing that I think just culturally sometimes we struggle with is being open to viewing things differently than we have, and I think that's just people in general. Thinking about things in new ways. I think is just a hard thing for people. Going back to your analogy with physical health, right now you see a movement just all across the country where people are trying plant-based foods.
Yeah.
Right? Burger King has their plant-based burger. KFC, I think, has a whole plant-based restaurant in Atlanta right now where they're serving, they're serving plant-based chicken. And you see a lot of people, lines wrapped around people trying to get these things that in the past they may not have been open to. But they see more people saying, hey, this is okay, this is okay, this is all right. And if we can start having more discussions like we're having right now, and have more people who feel similarly to say, no, it is okay to go and get mental health, to say those things out loud, to say it is okay to go see a therapist, it is okay to talk about these things, it is okay to be sad. And people get depressed, that's a real thing. And there's a meme out there that says something like, it's okay to have Jesus and a therapist too. Because generally people will say, well, I'm just gonna, and again, both have their place. If you believe that God gave us everything that we need on this earth to be healthy, then you also believe that we need one another to be healthy. Just like you bless your food, it's nothing wrong with praying before you go see a therapist. You can do both. You can do both. You don't have to just pray away your mental health illnesses, just like you're not going to pray away your diabetes.
Right.
And just understanding and being open to really understanding that we're all human. These are very real things. It's not a weakness. It's not imagination. It's not something that you can always just fight through. Sometimes we need help, just like the physical health analogy. Just like we need medicine for our physical health needs, sometimes we need medicine for our mental health needs. Sometimes the medicine is talking to people. Sometimes the medicine is a hug. But we need to find out what that is, and what's holding us back, what's been afflicting us, and without addressing those needs, we're going to continue to be sick. We're going to continue to suffer.
Absolutely. Ulysses, you have any thing you want to add to that, as far as what we need to do to decrease that stigma of mental illness?
I have some things, and I think first communicate with each other. You know, hey brother, what's going on? How you feeling? I love the fact that you're set up a platform to talk about men and mental illness, especially African American and mental illness, because we deal with a lot on a daily basis, and how to address those things. We need to start talking about them. You know, so yeah, I'm a proud member of American, excuse me, and I think Roy, you're a member too of the Black Male Therapist.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, proud member of that. We talked about had some pretty deep discussions on this thing about, dealing with our brothers and getting them into counseling to talk to us, knowing that there's men out there, men of color in the field as well, that are ready to talk. Anytime you're ready, we're ready to talk. We're ready to listen. That's our job, to listen, help you, help you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. So yeah, thanks again for the platform, Cuba. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Uh,
So, any final words? If you want to tell us more about your practice, how they can reach you, Roy, local folks, Kansas, Missouri side.
Yeah. So yeah, my practice, like I said, I always call it a small practice. I do contract work with Kids TLC, but I also see a number of people outside. And what I do in-home family therapy. I don't have an office that I operate out of. I go to the people's homes, and I see them there. I meet them where they're at. And I see all modalities. I see couples and families and adult individuals. I see people struggling with substance abuse, and a whole array of things. I guess the easiest way that I would say that you could probably reach me, I'll say for this platform, is if you want to go to my Facebook page, it's Roy the Therapist, and you can get my contact information from there. My email address and phone number are listed there. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my business partner and colleague, Frederick Johnson. We've been working together to create an organization, a nonprofit organization called Diversify You. And we're hoping to work with, again, particularly, he's been working really hard to work with the homeless population, as well as individuals who are coming out of the prison system, to help them to, get mental health services, and not only get mental health services, but to also get them on their feet, get them going on in the right path, and get them vocational services as well. And because, again, it's not just one thing. Like you said, speaking on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when those basic things aren't met, if somebody's not eating, if somebody doesn't have shelter, if somebody, is just going through it in life in general, they are going to put their mental health on the back burner. Just in life in general, self-care is another thing that's a really big deal that people always talk about. When life gets busy, when life gets hectic, when life gets stressful, self-care is the first thing that's going to go out that window. We're not going to do the things that we feel like can wait. And self-care is one of those things. It's like, I'm going to skip my therapy appointment because I need to eat. I need to go to work to get this money to keep my lights on. I don't have time to do these things to take care of myself because I don't have a place to live. So we want to make sure that, like you said before, that the whole person is taken care of. And again, I would say to anyone listening, please have these conversations with someone around you. Just mention it, talk about it, because you never know who might need to hear it. I'm hoping that these conversations will continue to happen. And again, like Dr. Leslie said, thank you so much for having this platform, for doing this, because it's much needed.
Thank you for coming. And Ulysses, any final thoughts that you have, and share with us how folks in the Austin and surrounding areas can get into services or utilize your practice?
Yes, do. We have a website, the whole project is centraltexas.com.
So I appreciate you gentlemen for sharing with us. Awesome discussion. And so now, Miss Lorena is going to tell us about your brunch next week. Is it called The Rebirth of You?
Yes.
Okay, I said that right. Okay, so I was like, I know it's rebirth, and I should have wrote it down. But anyway, so I had the pleasure of working with you before. Had an awesome time. Was it about 2 years
Yep,
ago?
2017.
What was the theme of that one?
It wasn't. It was just a connection to bring all the women together and let's talk, like the New Age Tupperware party.
Okay,
which was to talk.
I like that New Age Tupperware party. So tell me about how this came, the vision behind all this, that one and this one coming up, and then your sister girl, let me tell you, group and all that. So tell us about it.
All that came about with mental health. With mental health, I was going through a phase in my life. I was getting over the passing of my mother. My brother had just suddenly passed away, and I always knew I was raised a Christian, but I always knew there was something more to it. So I was just in a place like, okay, what is my purpose? I need a purpose. I know you're there. You need to answer my purpose because I know I'm supposed to be here to serve. And I woke up one morning, looked out the window, and clear as day, I seen My Sister Girl, Let Me Tell You. And I said, what the world is that? What am I supposed to do with that? And it just started falling on me like, you like to help, and one place you can help is start with women because you're a woman. I said, okay, and plus I have 4 daughters. So I was like, all right, so let's get to it. So Sister Girl, My Sister Girl, it's 2 of them.
Okay.
It's My Sister Girl, Let Me Tell You, because that's for women of color, because that's who I can kind of relate to because I'm a woman of color. And then the other one is Sister Girl, Let Me Tell You, which is for all women, you know, because I don't want to discriminate on anything. And I don't discriminate on your religion, your sexuality. If you were born a woman, I'm talking to you. I don't care if you say, well, now I'm a boy. I don't care. If you were born a woman, I'm talking to you. And that's how My Sister Girl and Sister Girl came about. It's just to help women, let it be a platform to where you won't be judged. You can come in here, you can market, you can share your ideas. If you want to talk to, connect with another woman, that's what it's for. And then I know a lot of women that are in business, that are becoming entrepreneurs. That's a way to communicate, share. Like I said, the New Age Tupperware, you know, share it. And so when we had the first brunch in 2017, that was just to bring it together, bring it out, bring that vision out to the forefront. In Cuba, I said, hey, Cuba, you want to come and talk? She's like, sure, what I'm talking about? I said, whatever you want. I don't care. And I had another couple of ladies come to do spoken word and things like that, and it was a really, really, really fun environment. So after that, women was like, when are you going to do it again? I'm like, I don't know. It's because I kept dipping in other things because I love to help people. I worked in the school system with the children. I would get all the kids that, the bad ones that they were called, they weren't bad. The thing was they just hadn't ate breakfast. Feed them. Then they'll be good to go. So now when I'm reinventing myself, because when I do the things for My Sister Girl, I'm in class too. I'm not, just because I'm the organizer don't mean I know it. I'm in class too because I have to learn too. And when this one came, oh my gosh, it came in a dream. Every person that's on this lineup came in a dream and a vision to me. So I said, okay, well, let's put it to work. I'm walking and stepping out on faith. Cuba, I need you. She was like, okay, what is it? I said, it's the rebirth of you. It's time, and I wanted to do it around Labor Day. So that's why it's next weekend, because why women give labor. They go into labor. We're pregnant 3 months. This is just the beginning, the mind. And thank you for having me here, because mental health, it all starts with our mind. We have to change our mind first if we want to change ourselves. So this September the 8th, next Sunday, is the rebirth of you, and it's mental. Because if you start mental, then everything else will go afloat. And so we have, as women, and I can only speak as men, not discrediting you men.
No.
Not discrediting you at all. I just can't speak because I'm not a man. But I feel that we as women, if we get ourselves together, our households will run better, our families will run better, and everything will just will run more smoothly. So the rebirth of you is basically you're about to give birth to yourself. You know, bring out whatever it is, whatever religion you is, your creator, your God, Yahweh, Allah, whatever. Bring that out of you. Bring it out, because it's there. And if you bring it out, then your seeds, your family, that will come out. Just like they were talking about communication. That's with that. Communicate. Bring it out. So next Sunday, 11 o'clock, September 8th, the rebirth of you is phase 1. Like I said, there's because we're pregnant 3 trimesters. The next one is we're going to talk about the body. The next one is the soul, because the mind, body, and soul to me is how you can manifest who you are. And again, it starts with your mind. You have to change your mind. So Cuba's one of my guest speakers. Thank you, Cuba, so much. I have Khadijah Hardaway. She's known throughout Kansas City. She's speaking. I have Charlotte Wafer. She's speaking. Here's her book, Flint to Flame.
Okay.
She's going to be speaking, and I've read this book, and whoo.
What is it about?
It's about her journey, Flint to Flame. It's about her journey through her divorce and things like that. I did get her permission to say that. I asked. And she's going to be there to talk about her book. And I feel if we reach one woman, we've reached so many. Because Cuba may say something that she gets. Charlotte may say something that someone else gets. Khadijah may say something someone else gets. You know what I'm saying? My job is just to open the door. You know, open the door to come in. Let's talk about this. Like you said, and it goes back to you guys saying mental health. And that's why we have to start with the mind. And then we're going to trickle, go to the body, and then go to the soul. And this is just a way for women to come together, not judge each other, not look down on each other, and come and say, hey, girl, how you doing? I like your jacket. Where'd you get it? And she can say, oh, I got this jacket at such and such, without going, I don't know. We got to get past that.
Yeah.
We have to get past that, especially in the African-American community. We have to get past that, because that's how we're going to come up. So we have great speakers there. We're going to have great vendors there. We have Bella Rama, who's Raina, who's a skin care, you know, and she creates her own oils. We have a young lady who's an inspiring DJ Dollface. My thing is, I just want to open the platform and say, hey, look at all these women. Look at what we can do. Now, if we come together, not isolating our men, because that's one thing I'm not with that. Like, nah, this is a one. Yeah, it's a woman's world, but we can't do nothing without that man standing beside us. For some women like other things. I'm not judging none of that. You understand? Because if you have that gift inside you, that gift doesn't know what sex you are. So that's what it is. The Rebirth of You Phase 1 next Sunday. Oh, you can get your tickets at Eventbrite. They're $10. You go on Eventbrite. All you type in is My Sister Girl. Hit this month, because today's September 1st. And it'll come right up for you. And the reason why we want to do it this way is because let's do business right. You know, sometimes we say, hey, black people don't do business right. It's a lot of black people that do business right. And as you guys were saying, another way to get the message out, knowing that there are black therapists. Because I, for one, I had to have, you know, the issue with that. I look for a black therapist, because to me, and this is to me, no one else, that white therapist cannot understand what I'm talking about. I'm sorry. Because to me, it's a different struggle. Just like I wouldn't know, if I was a therapist, I wouldn't be able to relate to them properly. But that's my opinion. And 9 times out of 10, that's probably 99% of how the household thinks.
I mean, that's the community as a whole, majority, they think that way.
But yes, so, and it's at K&T's Events Place, which is another black couple who has a business, 1001 Bannister Road. I like to keep it that way, but I also step out, because some of my vendors are not of African American color, but she's a woman. Do you see what I'm saying? So My Sister Girl and Sister Girls coming together to bring this event. Like I said, this is phase 1. We're starting with the mind. We got great speakers that's going to come out. They're going to change somebody. I know that. If we reach one woman, we won. Because she's going to take that and tell somebody else. And it's going to trickle. And then the next one is the body, and then the soul.
Awesome. Sounds like it's going to be great. I know it's going to be great.
Yes.
I enjoyed the last one. So
thank you.
So we're wrapping up here on the Panic Button. Good discussion here, and we'll have more to come. I'll be back with you next week, same time, 2 o'clock Central Time, which is noon Pacific Time for our West Coast listeners and viewers on Facebook Live. If you haven't already, I don't know how you're listening to it now, but download the app on Google Play. Or if you're like me with the iPhone and have iOS, then you'll go to www.the5 radioxl.com, and you could Also visit social media. The Radio 5 Radio has Facebook and Instagram. I'm not sure if they're on Twitter or not, or whatever. I don't know all the social media platforms. Me, I'm more of an Instagram, Facebook person. But you can follow me as well if you have any concerns or questions or any topics that you want to be discussed on the show. Shoot me a message or whatever. If you know me personally and you got my number, text me, call me, whatever. But we have some good shows coming up in the coming weeks. Next week we'll be talking about men's mental health. And then I think we have a show on self-sabotage, talking about regret. We'll have in the last week of September a show talking about surviving or healing from sexual abuse, sexual assault. And then October I got some exciting things lined up. So we're going to do some good things here, get some good topics to you. But let me stop rambling and let's get out of here and just be easy, y'all. And I'll see y'all next week. And if y'all want to hear some old school throwback music, I'm here on the 5 at noon Central Time with the throwbacks. All right, until next week, this is Cuba.